everyone. Happy Monday. Well, thank you for choosing to spend some time with me today. I'm sorry for being a couple minutes late. My husband just got home and I wanted to greet him at the door like a good and obedient wife would do. But, guys, we have got a really interesting topic today. It is a topic that I actually have not talked about lately, and that is the topic of psychological fuckery. Now, some might frown on talking about psychological fuckery. But I think that talking about psychological fuckery is important for several reasons. Number one is that the battle that we are in with the woke left for the soul of America, as it were, is it is a battle of attrition. There is a difference between a war that you fight with, like there are different types of wars that you can fight. In one war, you basically kill off the enemy and you defeat them that way, or you just you keep beating them, figuratively or literally, I suppose. But anyway, you keep beating them until they cannot fight anymore. It's like it's like a knockout, right? It's like if you're in a boxing match, your whole goal is to knock out your opponent, right? So that they can't get up, so that they can't find anymore. However, that is not the battle that we're fighting. When we're talking about the culture war, we are fighting a battle of attrition. This is the same type of battle that businesses fight. When you have competitors in business, like Mac versus PC or Walmart versus Target or et cetera, they are fighting a battle of attrition. Does anyone know what a battle of attrition means? Any ideas in the chat? This is going to be a little bit of an interactive stream we're going to do today. I'm going to teach you some stuff. But what do you guys think? I know there's a little bit of a delay, so I'm just letting you guys answer for a sec. Anyone have any ideas what it means to be in a battle of attrition? Anyone? Bueller. Am I talking to myself? All right, I'll tell you. A battle of attrition is not about physically making it so that the enemy can't go on. It is about making the enemy give up. You want the enemy to voluntarily withdraw from the battlefield. Yes, you guys are getting it now. Okay, maybe it was just the delay in the chat. Slowly whittling away an enemy at a time. Yeah, that's great. Yep. And it's also about you move inch by inch until you eventually win. That's part of it. But Dragon Water is actually making probably one of the best points. A battle of attrition is a battle that does not stop until someone chooses to leave the battlefield. The vast majority of wars that people fight are not about being physically more powerful than your opponent. It's about mentally outsmarting them to the point where they give up. Rabbi X says a war of attrition is when you completely decimate your opponent and yes, this is perfect. You take away their will to fight. In the vast majority of cases, can an enemy, however you define your enemy to be, can they physically go on? Well, yeah, most of the time they can. But what we want to do is we want to get to the heart of the matter. We want to take away any sense they have that they're going to have any chance of a victory in this fight. And the way that we do that is from psychological fuckery. That is how you win wars in today's society. And the war that we are in for the culture, the war that we are in against the woke left, it is all about outsmarting your opponents and making it not physically possible, but intellectually impossible for them to continue. There are other reasons we want to engage in psychological fuckery as well. One of the main reasons, and we're going to talk about this, is that when you engage in psychological fuckery with an opponent, you force them into making mistakes. If you can get your opponent to make a mistake, that is a win for you. And oftentimes the easiest way to do that is by getting in their head and trying to guide their thoughts to a really dark place where they think all hope is lost and then they act out. Another reason we want to learn about psychological fuckery is because, well, it's fun. It's fun. Listen, I studied psychology to be able to help people, and that is legitimate. And I very rarely will use psychological fuckery against people unless they damn well deserve it. But it is so much fun when they do. It is so much fun to toy with people. It is so much fun to watch them squirm. And remember, we're talking about people who deserve it. We're not talking about innocent bystanders. We're talking about people who have done something to deserve the mind fuck that you are about to hand them. But the last reason is this, and this is probably the most important reason that I want everyone to take the topic of psychological fuckery seriously. When you understand how to screw with the heads of other people, that means you will be in a better position to not be screwed with yourself. Because when you learn how to execute some of the tactics we're going to talk about today onto other people, you set yourself up to be able to detach from it when it's happening to you to say, why am I really upset right now? This person has said something and it's triggered me by doing this, and that's why I don't like it. And you set yourself up in a position to be more resilient to psychological fuckery attacks when people try to do it to you. And believe me, people will try to do it to you. Heather says, if you make a course on how to do this, I will purchase it. Well, Heather, it's interesting that you say that because I do have a side project, and this is a side project that I've just been playing with, but will probably eventually turn into a course and a book called The Art of the Trigger. I've done a couple videos about Art of the Trigger. You guys thought it was just about me pissing off influencers? No. The Art of the Trigger, which you can find by going to artofthetrigger.com. Actually, let me see. Do I have a banner made for this? I think I might. Do I have any clicky banner that I made for this? Yes, I did. Look at that. You can subscribe at artofthetrigger.com. What it's going to do right now is it's going to redirect to a Substack where I've started writing, and I have a podcast that I'm going to be that I've actually it should be up in other places. I'm basically starting with a Substack right now, and there's articles on here about why we're talking about triggering people. There's article like all triggers are self-inflicted. I've got the case study of the triggering of Styx Hexenhammer. I've got the case study. I thought I had the case study of Deb Philman. Hang on. Maybe I need to the triggering of Deb Philman. I'm doing triggering case studies talking about how I psychologically fucked with people and how they lost their shit as a result of it. So this is a fun site. I'm calling The Art of the Trigger a satirical self-help site with real self-help because in exploring why in exploring how we are triggering other people and why other people get triggered, we can better protect ourselves from being triggered and we can better take care of our own baggage. So Art of the Trigger is like, it's a side project. I'm not promising a regular publishing schedule or anything, but it is something that eventually I do actually want to turn into a course. And I do actually want to write a book called The Art of the Trigger. I have so many articles I want to write for Art of the Trigger. Did you guys know? Side note, did you guys know that I once triggered the Church of Satan on Twitter? This is real. I once triggered the Church of Satan. Does anyone remember this? I had like an hour-long pissing contest with the Church of Satan Twitter account in which they were absolutely triggered by me. That's going to be a whole Art of the Trigger case study. It was fascinating. That is one of that triggering the Church of Satan was like a feather in my cap. I was so impressed with myself. Yeah, some people remember it. They do. They do. So this is what Art of the Trigger is. It's to teach people how to do this because I do actually think that that this is important. But for today, what we're going to do, guys, is we're actually going to start with a reading. We're gonna start with a reading from my book, Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide to fighting back against woke insanity in your life. I'm gonna read you a couple of pages from Actively Unwoke. If you haven't gotten the book yet, you can get your copy of the book at activelyunwoke.com. I have the link in the description below, and you can get it on Amazon. You can get it off Amazon, stuff like that. But I do actually write about this in Actively Unwoke. And so what I want to do is I want to just read you a couple pages from the book where I talk about the different ways that we might use triggering and playing mind games with people. And no, Alex, this is horrible advice. This is really bad advice, Alex. Either you're on the team or go watch something else. I will be using mind games against people, and I will be teaching other people how to use mind games against people. And if you want to be a loser who does not win wars ever, please feel free to exit now. But if you want to learn actually how to get shit done, then you're welcome to stay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you a couple pages from my book where I'm talking about this so you guys can kind of start to see how we can practically apply it and how we would use it against the progressive left in the real world. And then oh wow, I get to see a live Carlin. Hi France. I like your profile image. That's great. Yes, well, you sound kind of like a leftist, darling. If you think words are violence. See, the thing is, the thing about why this pisses people off so much is, listen, man. Here's what you need to know about triggering and why people like Alex think it's terrorism. There's a secret to fucking with people. People cannot be fucked with unless they allow themselves to be fucked with. You cannot be triggered unless you choose to allow yourself to be triggered. If you take horrible advice, like what Alex is trying to give you right now, this is really horrible advice. People do not make decisions rationally. People make decisions emotionally and then they justify them rationally. They make emotional decisions. Emotional decisions are usually deeply subconscious. There is not a single human being on this planet, I don't care how autistic you are, that makes decisions rationally. You make decisions emotionally on a deeply subconscious basis, and then you justify those decisions in your rational conscious mind. The problem is that our emotional mind is by and large our subconscious mind. And so many people think they're making decisions rationally because our conscious mind is our rational mind. The only part of the brain that we are consciously aware of is the logical part of our brain. But that doesn't mean that's the most powerful part of our brain. It's actually the least powerful part of our brain. So, and Deborah says what Carlin is saying has been shown via research. Yes, it has. Yes, it has. So, Alex, I want to recommend that you stay and you learn how to prevent yourself from being psychologically fucked with, because that's probably going to be a much better place to start. For anyone who is looking for where I'm starting, I'm going to be starting on in chapter 4 under rule number 2, enjoy the fight. This is page 84 in the book if you want to follow along. So we're going to do that. We're going to talk. I'm going to read a couple there we go. I'm going to read a couple pages from my book. I'm going to do a little bit of commentary on it. And then we're going to talk about highly useful techniques that you can do to fuck with people psychologically. And because we're talking about highly practical techniques, we're going to talk about tarot cards. Now, listen, tarot cards are not just about telling fortunes. Tarot cards are about archetypes. They're about different facets of the human experience. And there are 2 tarot cards specifically that I like to think about when it comes to playing psychological games with people. And those are the 8 of Swords and the 9 of Swords. These are the 2 cards that you want to be living in. And you might be able to tell why we're going to talk about these 2 specifically just by looking at them. Just by looking at them. These people don't look like they're happy. These people are not in a good place. This is what we want to do with people when we are psychologically fucking with them. Yes, lawyers do this shit all the time. Lawyers do this all the time. Social media influencers do it all the time. Chrissy Mayer has been trying her level best. Chrissy Mayer has really been giving it the old college try over the last couple days, except that Chrissy Mayer is far dumber than me by like a level of about 60 IQ points. And so there's nothing that she can do that's going to work, but she's really been giving it her best I encourage Chrissy to try to continue working on her psychological fuckery game and see if she can get better at it, because it really is just about practice. It is. And so that's what we're going to be doing today, guys. And so if that sounds great, you're welcome to stick around. Please mount that like button for me if you have not already. I want to say hi to everyone watching on YouTube, Odyssey, Rockfin, Rumble, Getter, wherever else I might be streaming from at any given moment. But guys, welcome. I please subscribe on whatever platform you're watching on. I would really appreciate it. And of course, if you would like to support the work I'm doing, you can head over to activelyunwoke.com/support. And you can actually, we have a Zoom call in my community coming up at 7 o'clock tonight. If you would like to come to a private, unrecorded Zoom call with me and my community at 7 o'clock tonight, these Zoom calls will go all night. We call Monday Marathon Monday because the Zoom call will probably last like 4 to 5 hours. That's not a joke, because we enjoy being around each other that much. And so you're welcome to drop in anytime over the next over 4 to 5 hours of this Zoom call that we're going to be having tonight. The way you get access to that is by becoming a member on either my locals or my Patreon. So you can find those links over at activelyunwoke.com/support. Patreon, you can join anywhere from $5 a month all the way up to $250 a month if you want, depending on how much you like me on any given day and what kind of swags and perks you want. Locals is another option. You can join for $5 a month or $50 a year, which gives you 2 months for free. You can also make a one-time gift if you just kind of want to check it out. My Zoom calls are the best. My community is the best. They are, you know, regardless of the topic we might be talking about today, my community are sane. They are down to earth. They are very kind people. I love and appreciate them, and I know that you will too. So come and join us for a Zoom call in about an hour and a half. These are private. These are not recorded. These are not for public consumptions. And if you like the tea that I spill on my public YouTube channel, just know that my locals members get the tea way, 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 way before I spill the tea on YouTube. They get it way, way, way before, because our calls are private, they are unrecorded, and what is said in those calls stays in those calls. Mark Robichaud, welcome back, my friend. Do I ever sleep? I slept about 5 hours last night. I got a lot of sleep between the hours of 4 a.m. and 9 a.m. And that is my usual sleeping schedule these days, because I have totally effed up my sleeping schedule. All right, guys, I want to start by reading from my book, Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. And again, if you have the physical copy of the book, you can start on page 84 if you want to follow along. It's available in hardcover, Kindle, and also an audio version on Audible that I did read myself. We are going to be starting in a chapter that is a play on Rules for Radicals. So I have a chapter called 11 Rules for the Actively Unwoke, where I do literally give 11 rules that I think that we need to follow in our fight against the woke left. And I just want to read a couple of the rules to you so you can kind of see where I'm coming from. All right. So we're going to start with rule number 2. That's called enjoy the fight. I'm nervous now. I'm reading my own book. I haven't done this in a while. I'm going to be honest. I don't know if we can win this fight. I really don't. But I do know I'm not going to go down without fighting every step of the way. People are split into 2 groups when it comes to engaging in conflict. Roughly 50% of people genuinely enjoy a good challenge and love the uphill journey of fighting back against an enemy. And the other 50% want to dive under the table and hide anytime conflict rears its head. In order to effectively fight back against the woke, you need to enjoy the conflict. It is impossible to be effective in this fight unless you are willing to piss people off. Every single time you piss someone off, you know you've moved the needle, or else they wouldn't be pissed off. Remember, in the previous chapter, we discussed the success mindset, and one of the critical components of a success mindset is positive engagement, which means you look at stress as an opportunity rather than something to be feared. This is simply a matter of perspective. We can always make the choice to look at things that happen to us with the worst possible interpretation or the best possible interpretation. Let's say you go to a school board meeting and speak up against integrating Black Lives Matter into your kids' curriculum. When you do it, you piss off a group of Karen moms who excommunicate your kid from the community play group because they don't want their child playing Legos with a child of racists. Yes, this is a real possibility. Some might look at this as a bad thing. You've lost a playgroup, but you can also look at it as a blessing. You just exposed the Karens for their true Karen nature. Maybe you thought they were normal people before, and now you know they're pod people. You know they're not your allies, and you can move on to find the allies who will help the fight. Remember, there are more people on your team than there are on theirs. You've just identified a bunch of people who are not on your team. That opens the door for new people who are on your team to come into your life. You always have the power to change your perspective, and the more you're able to do it, the more energy you'll have for the fight that really matters. When you piss people off, instead of being afraid that you're going to be canceled, revel in the fact that you got their goat enough that you set them off. Let their anger fuel your commitment. Know that you only start taking flack when you're over the target. Tell yourself whatever you need to in order for you to truly believe that this is a good thing. Did Tim Pool write this book? No. Tim Pool is not smart enough to write this book. If you want bonus points, start looking at it as a game. In video games, you go through a series of progressively harder challenges until you meet the final boss and free the princess or whatever it is. Look at fighting the woke as the same type of game. Whether you're fighting back by building awareness, going after the schools, speaking up in the workplace, trying to create art to influence culture, make it fun. Try to gamify the fight. Create positive incentives for your wins. Reframe everything in terms of making the fight a fun experience so you trick your brain into enjoying the fight. You are fighting for something noble, an idea that has lit the world's beacon of hope for almost 250 years. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it can be exhausting. Yes, it seems as though we are in an unwinnable fight. But while we're in it, we might as well make the most of it. When the founders of the United States declared independence from their British overlords, they committed treason. If we lost that fight, the founders would have been executed. They fought for purpose, for what they knew was correct. The fight we are in today is to extend the legacy that started in 1776, not in 1619. Show up and celebrate that you're part of keeping this great experiment alive. Now, this rule is about having fun with what you're doing and not being afraid to make people mad. You cannot be afraid of this. Listen, I promise you that when you are saying things that are important, you are going to piss people off. And sometimes you're going to have to get in their head in order to get them to voluntarily drop out of the battle. Again, fighting back against the woke left is a battle of attrition. You have to use the tools that you have available to you. And one of the tools that is so routinely underutilized is fucking with their mindset. Logic is not going to win this fight, guys. It is just not. We have to use every single tactic that we have available to us. And so you have to find a way to enjoy it. There is nothing, things only have the meaning that we assign to them. There is nothing inherently wrong with pissing people off. Their emotions are their responsibility. What we are doing is taking advantage of the fact that we know how their brain works to try to get them into a headspace where they don't want to continue any longer. And there's nothing wrong with it. This is not cruel. You are not doing anything that is going to lead lasting psychological damage. You're really not. Don't let anyone convince you that you are, because you're not. These are, quite frankly, things that children should have learned on the playground in elementary school back before the time where everyone got a trophy and everyone was included. Kids used to learn this when they were in elementary school. They don't learn that anymore. So we need to take advantage of it. So, yeah, I mean, we're doing a little bit of a book reading, but then we're going to talk about other stuff after it. We're just doing this to kind of tee up the conversation. So, rule number 2, enjoy the fight. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, rule number 3, this is really important. And this is true for general psychological fuckery as it is for writing the woke or fighting the woke left. Rule number 3, stop accepting their rules. If the devil came up from hell and said, "We're going to play a game. If I win, you spend an eternity with me in fire and brimstone. If you win, you get to spend eternity in a beautiful, cushy mansion on a cloud with God. The rules of the game are that I get to set all the rules and can change them at any time for any reason." Does that sound like a fair game? Does that sound like a set of terms you should accept without questioning it? Accepting the rules that without question is the most common mistake people make in fighting back against the woke. For example, the woke believe everyone who is born white is racist. Oftentimes, I'll see people reference this as fact, as though it's just accepted truth, rather than instead of something the woke have just made up to use to their advantage. If someone calls you a racist, here's what you say: "No, I'm not." When you do that, you can expect the woke to trot out their redefined definition of racism, that it is prejudice plus power. They also might say that you're upholding white supremacy because of the idea of systemic racism. If someone does that, here's what you say: "I don't agree with any of that." It's that simple. Don't elaborate. You don't owe them that. Don't be defensive. You're allowed to see the world in a different way. Just state clearly and assertively that you disagree with the entire premise of their argument. Make no mistake, they're not going to like it. They will probably encourage you to find your nearest gulag and report for re education camp immediately, or minimally tell you that you need to educate yourself. But you are under no obligation to acknowledge the validity of their perspective. No matter how much they try to guilt you or gaslight you, stand your ground. The woke have been the ones proactively fighting this battle for decades, while the rest of us have been reacting to it. That means that sometimes we find ourselves on the back foot. Because we're reacting, it can be easy to overlook the premise of the argument. But you must remember that the woke are entirely making this shit up. It's delusion, fantasy. You can accept their premise if you choose to, but they are not entitled to it. Not accepting their premise exploits one of their worst fears: losing control. Remember how we discussed the personality type that the woke tend more towards the dominant and conscientious side of the DISC model? What those styles hate more than almost anything else is losing control. That's also Tim Pool's personality type, as it turns out. I'm just saying. That is their kryptonite. When you use this as your weapon, they get angry and they start making mistakes. That's when you can go in for the kill. I want to say thank you for Mimi McGee. Carlin, you have no idea how much I needed to hear this today. Thank you. Thank you, Mimi. I really do appreciate that. So, guys, this is a rule about maintaining control even when someone else is trying to take it away from you. And this is highly relevant to the topic of psychological fuckery, because psychological fuckery is, at its core, it's a pissing contest. It's a battle of wits. It's to see who can outwit the other person. And most of the time, if you have the presence of mind to be able to dodge and maneuver around whatever they throw at you by not accepting the premise that they are trying to get you to accept, then you will maintain the power position. You will absolutely maintain the power position. The minute that you lose to these people or with anyone that you're trying to screw with is the minute that you allow yourself to accept the rules of the game that they are trying to force you to play by. You don't owe anyone that. Your perspective is yours. You have no obligation to go to the perspective of another person just because they tell you to. All right. Now, the last rule we're going to read is rule number 4, and it's called Come at Them, Bro. I once debated critical race theory on YouTube, teamed with Gothics and Christian Watson, against 2 CRT academics who shall remain nameless to protect the guilty. I knew that the conversation was likely to revolve around them making a convoluted argument that we didn't even know the definition of critical race theory. They would rely on obscure academic sources they pulled out from their back pocket for the specific purpose of confusing people. So I did the only sensible thing, and I hit them right between the eyes with an opening statement declaring in very assertive terms that I did not care about CRT from an academic perspective, nor did I care about any of their obscure journal articles. I only cared how CRT manifested itself in the real world in regard to training in the workplace or classroom instruction in schools. I was unwilling to engage in any discussion that did not focus on how the average person experiences critical race theory. This aggressive approach pissed them off so badly that 2 experts who were working on their PhDs on the topic found themselves completely unable to produce a definition of critical race theory for the first 90 minutes of the debate. Of course, they clutched their pearls that I would do such a thing as dismiss their argument without considering it, and that I didn't act as though I was participating in a collegiate debate that they were apparently expecting. They continued to mock me after the debate. How dare I dismiss their scholarly work? And that's how I knew I got them. I treated them with the righteous indignation that they rightfully deserved, and it broke their ability to mount an argument in front of a live audience. The fact that they were kicking and screaming after the fact just emphasized the win. The woke do not know how to handle it when you come at them. They are so used to being the aggressors that when someone else assumes the role, it throws them off balance in a way that is difficult for them to come back from. Doing so harkens back to rule number 3. You are taking them out of control. The majority of people reading this will likely not feel comfortable with that level of assertiveness, but the reality is that just because it's not your natural tendency to be assertive in regular life, just because you feel uncomfortable, it doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you need a bit of practice to become more comfortable. Think of yourself in a play. You're not performing as yourself. You're being the person you need to be for that particular situation in order to be the most effective. One caveat to this rule is that you have to be mindful about where you're implementing it. For example, if you're required to go to a diversity training in your workplace, the thing that pays your mortgage, getting up and reading the trainer the Riot Act is probably not going to work out well for you. However, if you're at a school board meeting, ready to give your kid's principal a piece of your mind, let it rip. So, this is a rule about not being afraid to assume the aggressive position, to nail someone right between the eyes. I accidentally just flicked my camera. I didn't mean to do that. I thought I was farther away. See, sometimes it gets a little dangerous, doesn't it? But you can't be afraid to hit them right between the eyes, because when you hit them right between the eyes, that's when they start making mistakes and that's when they start screwing up. And all of these are principles that are directly derived from fucking with people's heads. It might not be the comfortable thing to do for a lot of people, and I really do understand that. I really, really do. We have been taught from the time we are yay high that it is extremely rude to fuck with someone's head. It is uncouth. It is not civilized to do. However, where does that come from? Where does that come from? Honestly, it comes from the idea that other people don't want to be fucked with. But sometimes they deserve it. Actively Unwoke. Actively Unwoke is my book. You can find a copy at activelyunwoke.com, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. That's what we just read from as our intro to psychological fuckery for today. So, do those ideas make sense? I just want to do a quick pause and test the mood of the chat. What do you guys what are some of your thoughts based on those couple of rules that we read from my book and what I've talked about so far? I have more I want to say about it, but I just want to do a quick pause and get a temperature check from the people who are listening. And as you guys are as typing in your thoughts, I'm going to ask you to mount that like button for me if you have not already. And I'm just going to go ahead and check in on some of the other platforms, see if anyone's saying anything there. Hello to everyone watching on Odyssey, Rockfin, Rumble, even Getter. I appreciate you guys. And guys, you can pick up a copy of my book at activelyunwoke.com. If you would like, hardcover, paperback, audio version. Yes, this is what we're doing, Phil. When we are engaging in psychological fuckery, we are taking their power away from them. Remember, the woke left have four primary goals: gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in their Marxist utopia. Those are their four goals. The very first one is about attaining as much power as possible. If we are taking their power away from them, we are sabotaging all of their subsequent goals. That's why. Yes, love it. Yeah, Grandma Nate, you have my book. Yes, it reminds me of something that Alex did to someone that one time. Indeed, indeed. Be wise as serpents, but harmless as doves. Well, I don't mind being harmless, or I don't mind being harmful to people who are trying to hurt me. Listen, this is one of the things that I'm going to keep that up. This is one of the things that prevents people from engaging in the things that are required in order to win. They think screwing with someone's head, it isn't nice. It isn't nice. I don't want to inflict harm. You're not inflicting real harm, is the thing. Two points to this. Number one, I would never suggest that people go to the lengths of actually abusing someone. Like, don't with great power comes great responsibility. You can always use things for good or you can use them for evil, right? I am not suggesting that anyone go to the lengths of actually inflicting long-lasting abuse. Although if a person decides to do that, that's their choice, but I'm not going to take responsibility for that. That's not what we're talking about here today. We are talking about throwing someone off kilter. We are talking about making someone angry because they didn't get their way. We're talking about triggering people. This literally happens every single day on the internet. People survive. No one is dying from this. No one is going to lasting rounds of therapy over this. Okay? Worse things happen on Twitter every single day than what I'm talking about now. So people have to get over their their self-imposed limitations for why they don't think it would be a good idea to do this. That's rule number one. But number two, again, and I said this at the top, but I'll say it again. You cannot screw with someone that is not allowing themselves to be screwed with. People allow you to screw with them or they don't allow you to screw with them. Every single time you mess with someone's head, all you're doing is planting a seed. That's it. That's all you're doing. You're not even doing the real work. If someone doesn't want to be fucked with, they will not be fucked with. If someone says, not today, Satan, then there's nothing you can do. If someone is strong and has mental fortitude and has resilience and understands the rules of psychological fuckery, there is literally nothing I can do to fuck with them. You can only fuck with weak-minded people who allow themselves to be fucked with. That is the truth. Now, weak-minded people who find themselves on the receiving end of it all the time, they don't want to admit that they're finding themselves on the receiving end of it because they're weak-minded people, but that is the truth. They're finding themselves on the receiving end of it because they're weak, because they haven't worked on themselves, and because they are allowing you to fuck with them. Yes, Reagan is making a great point. My thought is if you don't take it upon yourself to apply this tactic, someone will be applying it to you and weakening you. Absolutely, Reagan. Every day of the week, every single day. Let me see. I just want to go through the chat a little bit. Dragonwater says it makes sense. The hard part for me is that I want to eventually create a world where people look for win-win situations. Yes, but that's not happening right away. Are we still getting our? Yes, you are. Don't worry, Melissa. They are on their way. I promise. Deborah says, observe the enemy for their trigger point, which usually is something that they think is their strength, but what they hear that they are not, like I am a good man, they challenge it. Yes, that's exactly right. If you go with someone's self-construct about themselves, oh, it'll do wonders. Words are not violence. You are not inflicting violence on anyone by saying words they don't like. This is a great point. Anyone that tries to tell you that this is evil or that this is abusive is probably a woke leftist because words are not violence. Words have no meaning except the meaning that we ascribe to them. Let's see. All right. So, with that out of the way, well, yeah, Mimi says the left makes us feel like nothing we say about our views are legitimate. It's only fair to fight back and teach ourselves not to feel bad about it. Mimi, that is exactly right. The left does this stuff all the time. The left does this stuff literally every day on the news. And the right doesn't want to fight back because they're like, oh, it is uncivilized. We want to win through logic. Well, guess what, guys? You're not going to win through logic. The intellectual dark web is a complete and total failure. Has anyone noticed this? Can anyone name one member of the intellectual dark web that has not turned out to be disappointing? It's a complete and total failure because logic does not work in these fights. And the only people who want you to believe that logic will work in these fights are the academics who are completely insulated from this in the first place. Logic is not going to win this battle. It's just not. That is not possible. Let's see. All right. Guess I'm caught up. All right. So, what I want to do now is to talk about psychological fuckery from a high level. And we've got about an hour and 15 minutes before, well, about an hour because I need a little bit of a break. We've got about an hour before I have to go for the Zoom call with my community. And again, if you want to join my community, either through Locals or Patreon, the link is in the description below. You can join us for a private Zoom call starting at 7 p.m. Eastern time tonight. But I want to talk about this from a high level. Okay. When you are fucking with someone, there's one of two positions you can take. You can either be the dominant person in the conversation, which is going to be your more aggressive posture. Like if I'm yelling at someone, it's because I've taken the dominant position in the posture. I'm going to dominate that person either with my words or with my tone of voice or with the power that I'm going to throw at them that they are going to feel in their bones, whether they acknowledge it or not. And that is how I'm going to get control over them. Does everyone see what I just did there? I took a dominant posture. This doesn't always happen in person, by the way, but oftentimes it does. You can do the same thing in text on the internet. I am going to dominate you with my tone of voice and my body posture, and there is not a goddamn thing you can do about it. Someone's going to clip that out of context, by the way. But did everyone see what I did there? If I was standing, I would be standing with my feet firmly planted on the ground, legs spread just a little bit. You are going to listen to me, and there is nothing you can do about it. That's not even me yelling, by the way. That's not even me yelling. I'm channeling my inner Tim Pool. Oh, am I? I could outpower Tim Pool without even blinking. Without even blinking. You want to lean in a little bit to the person. You don't want to be back. Lean in. You are going to do what I want you to do, and there is nothing you can do about it. That is the dominant posture, okay? That's tactic number 1. Oh, yeah, I'm about to be accused of being a dominatrix on Twitter. You guys watch this unfold. I am 100% about to be accused of being a dominatrix on Twitter. But if I do that to someone, they don't know how to respond. They really don't. And in their heads, what I'm doing is I'm making them feel like this. I'm making them feel like this. Redwood the Elf says, my favorite line is to observe that that it is unsporting to engage in a battle of wits with an unarmed opponent. That usually sizzled their bacon. Oh, I like that, Redwood Elf. We're going to talk about that tactic in a second. That's my second tactic, okay? Right now, we're talking about dominating people overtly, being the big D, the big swinging D in the room, if you will. Now, when we're dominating someone, we're trying to make them feel like this. Let me just can I just open this image? There we go. That's better. What does this image look like to you guys? And you got some helpful words there. Confusion, helplessness, immovability, static, isolation. You've created limitations around the person. When I am trying to overtly dominate someone in order to take their power away and to get in their head, I want them to feel like they have nowhere to go except to either retreat or to give me exactly what I want. Those are their only options. I want them to feel trapped. I want them to feel like they have their arms tied behind their back. There is nowhere to go. They are either going to go the fuck away or they are going to give me what I want. And that are their only 2 options. Do they teach this in the police academy? Oh, I bet they do. I bet they do. Trapped and blinded. Exactly. Exactly. Now, there's something interesting about this card, which is, again, tarot cards this is not about fortune telling. We're not doing fortune telling right now. What we're doing is looking at an archetype. We're looking at a certain type of life experience. We're looking at these are common things that every single person will experience at some point in their lives, okay? So the woman in this tarot card is interesting because is there anything really keeping her in this prison? It looks like she's in a prison with the swords around her, right? But if you look at the things that are binding her, those bindings are kind of loose. If she just like wiggled a little bit and moved around, she could easily get those bindings to fall down. And then she could take her blindfold off. And then she could just walk away. There is literally nothing keeping this woman in the prison. There's no guards. It's not even a real prison. She just thinks it's a prison because she's blindfolded. And maybe she senses that there are a bunch of swords around her. But there's nothing really keeping her there. Swords are all about, in the tarot, swords are about what's going on in your head. Swords are about your mental process. So even if I'm there and I'm going, you don't have any choice but to give me exactly what I want. The trick is to know that I don't really have any power over you. This is the trick around the psychological fuckery, right? I don't actually have power over people when I'm yelling at them and putting my finger in their face and I'm raising my tone of voice. I don't actually have any power over them apart from the power that they are allowing me to have. I have power over a person when they're in this position because they are allowing me to have it. Okay. I want them to feel like they have no other choice. But if they just stopped and took a couple deep breaths and like looked around, they'd be like, who the fuck do you think you are? You can't make me do anything. So, one tactic to screw with people is to make them feel like you are their only option, to make them feel small, to make them feel like they have their hands tied behind their back, to make them feel like they have nowhere else to go. That's our overtly dominant option. Our second option is more covert. More covert. Now, if dominating someone is one of the ways we can screw with them, what do you guys think is the other way? If dominating someone is one way, the opposite of dominating is what? I'll wait for you to chat in and answer. Yup, Redwood the elf. It's like the main character's realization at the end of the movie Labyrinth when she understands the line, "You have no power over me." That's exactly right. That's exactly. Oh, Dragon Water, that's interesting. I wouldn't have actually thought this, but this is actually interesting because ignoring someone is actually something that narcissists do when they want to control their victims. Actual narcissists will engage in the silent treatment. They'll withhold sex. They will do everything they can to want to make that person beg, "Come back, come back, come back." That's kind of getting at what I'm getting at. Being passive a little bit, maybe being more subtle. Yup. Submissive. Did you guys know that you can fuck with people by being submissive? Did you guys know you can control people by being submissive to them? In the land of in the land of BDSM, this is called topping from the bottom. It's where you're the submissive person. And I'm not saying I know this for any particular reason. It's you're you it's when you are engaging as the submissive person in the dialogue, but you are actually doing it in a way that is controlling the entire dialogue. So you're allowing the other person to kind of play pretend like they're in charge, but in fact, you're the one cueing a lot of the conversation. So when, well, not exactly. Not exactly that, Mark. um, so yes, yes, sir. Stop agreeing with me. Whatever you say, sir. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So this is the most common technique that you're gonna find with getting into someone's head. And I'll tell you what, okay, put like the kink stuff aside, put that aside for a second. You can use this in the workplace. This is absolutely a technique that you should use with your boss because you always want your boss to be in charge. Your boss always should think they are in charge, but you're the one that manipulates the situation to get the boss to go exactly where you want them to go. And it's much more subtle. Like, you're not going to find me yelling and pointing at someone when I'm doing this. I'm going to be much more like, I'm going to sit back. I'm going to have my hands kind of gently clasped in front of me. I'm going to allow the other person to talk first. I'm going to defer to the other person. I'm going to the usually what I'm going to do when I'm trying to fuck with someone by being submissive is I'm going to ask leading questions. Like, let me give you an example. So if I'm looking at, say, a Nicole Hannah Jones, and Nicole Hannah Jones says, she says, school choice is racist because it only impacts white people and getting our tax dollars to go into private schools that only benefit white people. Nicole Hannah Jones says that in order to use this tactic to kind of get my way, again, sit back, be a little bit more passive, and I would say, well, Nicole, I guess I just don't understand because you want to put yourself in the position of being dumb. I guess I just don't understand. Why don't you want poor black children to go to the same schools as rich white children? That isn't that racist? I have put them in the position of needing to respond to me. But there is no good response that Nicole Hannah Jones can give, right? So if I'm saying, "Oh, Dragon Water, oh, this is so funny. Carlin, it's hard to imagine with you fucking with someone by being submissive. You're just so Aries." Well, I might be Aries, but I have a Libra rising. So that means I'm actually a pretty balanced person. It's just that most of the time people see me yelling and so they think that that's all I do. But I'm actually a Libra as well. So don't don't let the Aries fool you. So if Nicole Hannah Jones says school choice is racist because it only benefits rich white children by funneling tax dollars into their schools, and you go, but Nicole, I just don't understand. Wouldn't school choice give all poor black children the same opportunities to go to the schools that the rich white kids go to? Is there any good way that Nicole Hannah Jones can answer that question? Is there any good way at all? No. There is no good answer to that question. What? And even if she does come up with it, no, you don't understand. Tax dollars are going to fund white schools. And then you go, but I guess I just don't understand why don't you want underprivileged black children to be able to go to those same schools? You just keep throwing it back at them. Keep playing dumb. James Lindsay's recommended to do this in the workplace where like if you have a diversity training and they're trying to tell you that like all white people are racist or something, you can ask but like does this mean everything is racist? But like how can someone be born racist? You can ask dumb questions. That's what this is. And you're trying to be really smart about the questions you're asking so that you put someone in a state like this. What does this mean to people? If you see someone and they're in bed and they're just like cupping their head and they're like, they look like they're in pain, they've maybe woken up from a nightmare. What are we trying to inflict on this person when we're trying to fuck with them from a more submissive stance? We're trying to inflict worry. We want their head racing. We want them questioning themselves. We want them searching for someone else to give the answer because they know there's no good answer that can come out of their mouths. We want them to feel it's a little bit different, isn't it, than feeling trapped. Like in this, we want when we're trying to fuck with them by dominating them, we want them to feel small. We want them to feel like they can't move. We want them to feel that we are their only answer. But this is actually way more insidious because in this, we are making their head race. We are making their mind just spin and spin and spin. Now, this, to be honest, well, it can sometimes have unplanned consequences. You have to be really careful with this, and I have to take I have fucked this up, okay? Listen, in one of my first articles for Art of the Trigger, I'll even just read it. Hang on. I'll just read it. Not there. Here. Let me see. I'll read this part in this article. I wrote this one called People Need to be Triggered. Let me see. Actually, why don't we just read this article? Because this article actually kind of really describes it. Here is why I think it's good for people to be triggered. I used to think okay. People today have no resilience and very little common sense. I used to think this was just young people, but no, it's people of all ages. Way to go, humanity. We are in the early stages of idiocracy. And that's why I think that most people are in desperate need of a good trigger. Sure, some people might say, Carlin, you're a psychologist. You shouldn't say such things as they clutch their pearls, but no, I'm serious. Triggering is a game where it's your job to know their emotions better than they know themselves. It's a game of interpersonal insight. And when you trigger someone, if they are smart, they'll gain insight into what makes them tick. That will make them stronger. You'll help them develop resilience. They should have learned from being bullied in elementary school, which was an important training ground for what the world really is. You see, for those of you who are too young to fully understand this yet, under 30, the world operates like high school. It's high school with more money, more power, and better drugs. People go through this time in their 20s when they act like what they believe adults are supposed to act like, professional. And every level they get promoted, they find that the perceived age of people in those roles begins to drop with just a touch more immaturity at each level. But by the time you hit the VP level, people are acting as though they wish they had acted in their 20s when they wasted their youth desperately trying to act like an adult. But here's the thing, because the real world operates like high school, I promise you that you are going to experience what you perceive as bullying. I promise you that you will experience social rejection. I promise that you will experience disappointment. I promise you that you will find something shocking or hurtful or offensive. And most of those things will have no impact on you if you develop resilience to them. The way we develop resilience is by getting triggered and using that to identify how we learn to identify when we're triggered. When you do that, you'll learn how to interrupt the trigger by acknowledging why the trigger was occurring in the first place. And this gets into how we make people feel like this. Anytime your head is kind of going in a million different directions, you're like, oh my God. Like, the great thing about triggering from a submissive stance is that you plant a seed and that's literally all you do. Why can't black kids go to the same schools as rich white kids? That's going to send Nicole Hannah Jones into any number of tangents that she's not going to be able to resolve without an epic amount of cognitive dissonance. But just like just like this person is able to take the bindings off and walk away if they want to, this person is also protected. They're not in any real danger. They're laying in bed. Okay? Nothing is actually happening to them, but it's all going on in their head, and they are the ones working themselves up into a tizzy. Each trigger has a root cause, usually stemming from, yes, what occurred in childhood. Poor relationship with father, trigger. Mommy issues, trigger. Being bullied, trigger. But not exclusively. If you experience trauma as an adult, it could come from that too. The trigger comes from somewhere. It's the job of the person experiencing the trigger to identify why it's triggering to them. Then they can work on that. Every time they get triggered, it'll impact them a little less. And let me tell you what, if they get triggered enough, then eventually you will not give a fuck about what anyone says or throws at you. And when you do not give a fuck, that is when you are truly free. Now, of course, you can only get the positive outcome if you do the work on the emotional baggage you might be carrying around. This isn't something that you can cheat. You either work your feelings out or you'll just keep getting triggered by the same thing over and over and over again. Ignoring the trigger just tends to make the trigger worse because it puts you entirely at the whim of the actions of others. Someone else tells a joke, you suffer. Doesn't seem ideal, does it? Why would you suffer emotionally because someone else made a joke you don't like, or spoke to you in a way that reminded you of mommy, or loved you when you didn't feel worthy of it? There's no reason to suffer when that happens, but oftentimes we don't know something is triggering until we experience the trigger. Something bothers us and we don't know why. And then it's happening again and again. And slowly we might be able to figure out where it's coming from, even if we can't fully identify it. That's especially true if you're actively looking for it. Once you know that the mommy issues are there, mommy issues suddenly become a whole lot easier to work out. Every trigger is an opportunity to make yourself a better person. If something, and this is the part where I get into where I have screwed this up in the past. If I say something that triggers you, that's your fault, not mine. Sorry, not sorry. Do I feel sorry when I trigger people? No, I don't. Well, Mostly no. There was this group of people I triggered so badly that they became obsessed with me. I didn't expect that. I really didn't. And I do feel sorry for that. One of them had mommy issues though and saw me as her mother, so I can't really help that. But the rest of them, I didn't realize how badly I triggered them until it was too late. So, yes, on occasion, I do feel sorry. We'll get back to that in a second. Some people deserve to be triggered, and I think we all need to acknowledge that. And the best way to avoid being one of those people is to learn how not to get triggered in the first place. I do not believe that my triggering you is your fault. Or, God damn it, I always screw up that line when I'm reading it. I do not believe my triggering you is my fault. I believe that it's your fault for not properly identifying and working out your emotional baggage and instead insisting on blaming someone who you probably don't even know really well for getting hit right in the feels. I'm sorry you haven't worked out your baggage, but your baggage is not my responsibility. Instead of being pissed off that you got emotionally outplayed, use it as an opportunity to address the real cause of the trigger in the first place. That way, the next time it happens, you know why it's happening, and that will prevent you from being triggered. See? No more relying on other people for your emotional state. You're in control of it. Isn't that better? Triggering people is an act of service, and being triggered is a blessing that you can use to make yourself a stronger person. If it's going to happen to you at some point anyway, remember, real life is like high school, then why not use the act of being triggered to make yourself better? Otherwise, it just seems like wasted energy. If you're triggered by this essay, use the wisdom in it to make yourself stronger next time. This is the art of the trigger. We're going to talk about triggering people a lot. You'll learn how to trigger. You'll learn how to avoid getting triggered yourself. It'll be fun. And so, why I wanted to read this is not only because I am really proud of this essay, I think it's really good, but I wanted to talk about this in particular where you can go too far with this technique. And sometimes, and the reason that you can go too far with this technique, just like I went too far with this group of people, the ones that are still obsessed with me today, Carrie Smith is their leader. Chrissy Mayer is on the way to joining this group of people who just live to talk about me every single day. Chrissy Mayer's bought a ticket. She's moving into the house. It can go too far, and you might end up with a horde of people on the internet totally obsessed with everything you say and do. And the reason that it can go too far, yes, that's right, John. I accidentally caused a 10 of swords. I accidentally caused a 10 of swords. Hey, do you guys want to see 10 of swords? It must be on here somewhere. Hang on. Card meanings. Swords. Hang on. I'll get the 10 of swords. So I tried to cause a 9 of swords, and I instead caused a 10 of swords. That's the 10 of swords. You don't want to go this far if you can help it. Sometimes it's accidental when you do it, but when you cause a 10 of swords, this is a complete and total breakdown. This is the worst possible thing that can happen. This is like endless suffering and pain. But remember, swords are mental processes. They're mental. And so all of this is in your head, but like this is being, I have a whole group of people on the internet that are at this level with me every single day because I went too far. Okay. Because I did. But I want you to learn from my mistakes. And the reason then that happens is because when you're using the more submissive technique to trigger people, all you're doing is planting a seed that is going to fester in their head. After you plant that seed by saying, Carrie Smith is working out her obvious mommy issues with me live on the internet for everyone to see because Carrie Smith wrote an essay about how she thinks I'm her abusive mother and is going through all of her mommy issues live on Twitter right now. That was all I had to say to plant the seed that eventually festered into a 2-year obsession. Because as soon as I planted that seed, she took it from there. Now, If you are using the submissive technique with people who are already psychologically fucked up, like let's say they have, I don't know, a personality disorder that hasn't been diagnosed due to childhood trauma, it is not out of the realm of possibility that they're going to take that seed and spin any number of stories about it. Because here's the thing, guys, our perception of the world, of our reality, entirely comes from the meaning that we assign to the external things that happen to us. There is not a single thing that is objectively one thing or objectively the other. Everything is neutral. Nothing is ever 100% good or 100% bad. Everything is neutral until it has the meaning that we assign to it. So if something happens to you, say someone says something you don't like, I just don't understand why poor black children can't go to the same schools as rich white children. There is nothing that has any meaning about that, right? That's not objectively good or it's not objectively bad. But if I were to say that to someone like Nicole Hannah-Jones, she's going to instantly view that statement as bad. And then her mind is going to go into overload trying to figure out how to counter the thing that she thinks it's bad. She's going to try to fight it aggressively. But Nicole Hannah-Jones could also say, you're right. You're right. Absolutely. Poor black children should be able to go to the same schools as rich white children. What are some other ways that we might be able to do that? And I don't know what she would say from there, but then she would be assigning a totally different meaning. And then she's going to interact with the stimuli in a totally different way. So when you are planting these seeds, you cannot control how people interpret them. That's what makes the submissive form of triggering or fucking with people, even it's more powerful, but it's also more dangerous. Because if I'm doing something like this, again, this is you're gonna do what I want you to do, and there's nothing you can do about it, and I will make you feel like the smallest human being in the world until you do what I want you to do and what I am telling you right now. That might seem like it's more out of control. God knows people on the internet think I'm out of control when I'm doing that. But actually, I'm much more in control of the entire situation when I'm making someone feel as small as I possibly can. They're either going to do what I want them to do, or they're going to basically shrivel up into a ball and die. Figuratively, not literally. No one dies from me yelling at them. But those are the two options. They're either going to shrink and cry, which has happened on occasion, or they're going to do what I want them to do. Those are their two options. And really, they can't really go any other place than that when I'm in their face pointing at them. Okay? This is like classic fight or flight sort of thing. They're either the shriveling is like they've frozen. They're like, "Oh, I don't know what to do." Which some say fight, flight, or freeze. So sometimes you might, when you're in a situation like that, you're either going to fight the person aggressively, which usually doesn't happen when I'm waving my finger in your face. You're going to turn and run away, or you're going to go, ah. So I'm actually much more control in situations like this, which is why you tend to see videos of me yelling on the internet, because when I'm yelling on the internet, I'm trying to exert control over something so that someone does what I want them to do. In these types of situations, you drop the bomb and you walk away. You don't need to do anything else. People will often, when they're fucking with people, and this might be why I have a horde I may have gone too far, but this is the mistake that people make, is they don't drop the bomb and then walk away. What they do is they drop the bomb, and then they drop another bomb, and then they drop another bomb after that, and they keep dropping bombs until the person just can't handle it anymore and they explode. Drop one bomb. You don't need to drop 5. And you have to trust that that seed is in there. You've planted the seed in the person's head, and then just start to watch their responses. You might not see the result you're looking for right away, But maybe in a day or two, maybe even in a week, maybe if you don't see a result after that, drop another bomb, walk away. This is a technique when you're fucking with people that you want to slow play. You've got your time. It's kind of like a cat with a mouse where like the cat doesn't kill the mouse right away. It's probably a horrible analogy. The cat doesn't kill the mouse right away. The cat like bats the mouse. The cat might even let the mouse run under the chairs. The cat's kind of watching it. The cat goes in for the mouse again, and the cat doesn't kill the mouse until the cat is good and ready to. The cat is playing. All right? That's what you're doing here. It takes a little bit longer. It's a little bit more of a slow process. But again, think of it as a dance. You're dancing with these people. You're allowing them to lead the dance. But really, you know where you're going. You're just letting them think they're in control and you let them think they're the ones that are maneuvering you. But no, 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 no. You're going to ask just the right questions or say just the right things at just the right time to plant those seeds in their head and let them take it from there. You're trying to cause worry. You're trying to cause guilt. You're trying to cause cognitive dissonance. You're trying to force them into a point where they have to make a decision between two different realities that they do not like and that do not overlap with each other at all, that are in complete conflict with each other. That's what you're trying to do. Create mental anguish. But just know that remember, you cannot fuck with someone if they do not allow you to fuck with them. Can't do it. So whatever they choose to do with that is on them. It is not on you. You should not feel guilty about any of this. You are not responsible for the emotions or the reactions of other people. You are only responsible for yourself. So, with that, I rambled for a little bit. I want to take a quick pause and I want to see if there are any questions in the chat. And you don't need to send in a super chat if you would like to. I won't turn it down, but you don't need to do that. And just let me know if you guys have questions about anything that I've talked about so far or thoughts. In a very real sense, this is like a magic trick or a con game. It requires a degree of participation by the victim. That's exactly right. Listen, I write in the book. There's a whole introduction in the book called You Are Not a Racist, where I basically say you're not a racist like 15 times in the introduction, because what would happen if every single time someone hurled the term racist, that we kind of said, no, I'm not a racist and walked away? The term racist only has power over people because it makes people feel like this. There we go. It makes people feel like this. Oh my God, am I really a racist? I can't be a racist. I have black friends. I can't be a racist. Why would they call me like when the woke left calls people a racist, they're making them feel like this. It requires their participation. If you just said, there's nothing wrong with me, I know I'm not a bad person, and just left the situation entirely, there is nothing else that needs to be done. Nothing else that needs to be done. What other questions or thoughts do people have? Is this making sense? It's so much fun, guys. And we can go in the future, and maybe I really will do a whole class on this. We can go into the future, the different trigger points for different types of people, the different fears that people have, taking people out of control, making them look stupid, questioning their looks, questioning their beliefs. Those are all very real things people can do. Shapiro actually handles it well. When called a racist, he says you're stupid for saying I'm racist without any evidence. I don't think that's a good way to handle it. I don't think that's a good way to handle it. I think it's inartful. I think actually I have a whole do I have the article up here? Let me see. Archive. I don't have it up yet. I must be working on it at some point. I think I'm working on it. But I actually do have an article on Art of the Trigger called "Insults Aren't Artful," where I'll leave that up actually. Where I don't think that insults are good ways to psychologically fuck with people. If someone says something I don't like and I say, "You're stupid," I'm sorry, that's just an artful and I think it looks ridiculous and I don't think it actually wins any ground. I think the very best thing that Ben Shapiro could say is if someone says you're a racist, no, I'm not. No. That's the most powerful thing you can do. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, sorry. You're a racist. No, sorry. Because the other person is trying to gain power over you. You gain no power over them. You don't take their power away at all if you go, you're stupid. But you do gain power if that person absolutely knows that you are not playing by the rules that they are demanding that you play by. You gain nothing by insulting someone. In fact, you honestly just reinforce that you're feeling self-conscious about what they said. But if you confidently stand your ground and you say, "No," and you just look at them with like a blank look, you're like, "Hmm." You're looking at them like again, when you're doing that, it's not quite the same thing because you're not yelling at them, right? You're not yelling at them, but you want them to feel small. You want them to feel like there's nowhere that they can go. There's no way they can get a hold of you. The Rabbi X says insults are childish and don't do anything except make you look weak. Yeah, the right uses insults way too much. The right needs to really, 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 really tamper down the amount of insults they use. And listen, man, I know I did my nitwit stream yesterday and I insulted Chrissy Mayer and Carrie Smith 19 ways from Sunday. I know. I admitted I was punching down and lowering myself to a childlike level on that stream. That's not what we're talking about today. That was not productive. That was fun time, okay? That was not productive. In any way was that productive. When we're actually trying to be productive in the world and really like get inside people's heads for good, you need to take different tactics. You guys, like one of the most effective things that anyone can learn how to do is change up their tactic based on the situation and based on the goal. If you are using the same tactic in every single circumstance, like you're always calling someone stupid or insulting their weight or things like that, it's like you're going to end up gaining nothing because you're not using the tactic that's best suited for the situation. Would it be taking it a bit too far to start singing "Nobody But Me" at that point? You know it starts, "No, no, 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 no." No, I think that'd be hilarious. Anything you can do to laugh, I think is a good thing. Yes, war games, the best way to win is not to play the game. I love it. Hallie says some of these people seem intimidating because they're so fragile. You know they'll go ballistic if contradicted. Well, Hallie, that is such a great point, and that is going to be one of these. Most of these actually it's a little bit of both actually. If I get in someone's face, you know why? You know why most of the people who complain about me can't stand me? Because if I get in their face and I go like this, it exposes how fragile these people really are. So in that sense, it really is a little bit more like this, isn't it? All the people that shit talk me on Twitter, if they were in front of me and I said, "Bitch, you better not ever do that again and don't ever come near me again. Stay the fuck away. Go over there." Those people would not know what to do. They wouldn't know what to do. And then they act out because they're acting out because I have so overpowered them and so made them feel like this person right here that they have nothing else to do but lash out like a caged animal. because they don't know how to control it. And then I win. If I get someone to lash out at me, separate from the obsessed horde on Twitter, if I get someone to lash out at me, like Chrissy Mayer, I win. They showed me that I absolutely do have power over them. Let's see. Let's see. Red Room District or Diecast says, the best one I've ever used was your future therapist is going to get rich and use that on my woke cousin. She hasn't talked to me in the last 2 years. Oh, that is an excellent example, Red Room Diecast, of this. If she hasn't talked to you in 2 years, you got in her head something good with that one. Let me see. Andre says, I agree, Carlin. That's the approach I use to combat corrupt humans like judges, senators, governors, etc. No stop, and I'll reel them in to go report them. Oh, God. This is great with schools. Do you guys see, like, sometimes when I'm taunting schools on Twitter, because Twitter is like all these people care about. If I'm taunting someone on Twitter and I'm just dropping bombs on Twitter and I'm going into their replies and I'm posting things about what they're doing to taunt them, if I'm taunting schools on Twitter, which strategy am I using? Am I using this one or am I using this one? Let me know what the answer is in the chat. If I'm like, just like, oh, we're coming to get you. We have all the FOIA requests. Oh, you're going to get a mountain of FOIA requests. Oh, you know that presentation from that trainer, and then you tag the trainer in the tweet. We're gonna FOIA that training. We're gonna put that on the internet. Which tactic am I using? Am I trying to dominate them? Or am I kind of more just, we're gonna come after you. We're gonna expose all of your documents. I'm not really being submissive in that position. So I'm not being submissive, but I'm not in their face wagging my finger and like really leaning into it and throwing all my power at them either. I'm more like, yeah, well, I'm going to FOIA request all your presentations and there's really nothing you can do about it. That's going to cause them to do that. And when they do that, they start to make mistakes. Now, you can get them to make the same mistakes if you go hard at them. I'm going to FOIA request all your presentations and there is not a damn thing you can do. And they'll get pissed off and they'll still make mistakes. But it's so much sweeter when you do it. I'm going to FOIA request all your presentations and there's nothing you can do about it. So much sweeter that way. Let's see. Just scrolling through the chat, guys, seeing if there are any more questions. Yeah, sometimes you do both. But listen, like when you pull out the dominating tactic, you have to be prepared to be in the dominant position for the rest of the relationship, which makes it a little bit like each tactic has benefits and drawbacks. The dominant tactic actually gives you a lot more control, but the more submissive tactic is so much more fun and so much more artful and kind of unpredictable, but sometimes in good and interesting ways. Redwood the Elf, what tactic would the old therapist trick of answering one of their questions with a question? Well, I would say it's this one. If you're anytime you're asking someone a question, so why don't you think that all black children should be able to go to excuse me, let me try that again. So, why do you think that underprivileged black children shouldn't be able to go to the same schools as rich white children? Why did that make you feel that way? Are you why would that make me a racist? Is everyone a racist? You're not raising your voice, you're not overtly dominating, you're not even like covertly dominating. When you're asking a question, you are putting someone else in the power position because putting someone else in the power position allows them to give you an answer. But you're trying to make the act of answering really, 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 really uncomfortable for them. You don't want it to be. So are you saying that everyone is born a racist just because their skin color's white? I guess I just never thought of it that way. You're trying to make the act of answering that question extremely uncomfortable. Dominant tactic against a real dominant may not be such a good idea if that tactic's unnatural to you. Well, that's a really great point because there are people that, like, for me, one of my communication styles is I am naturally more dominant. Actually, you know what? This can actually work both ways now that I'm thinking about it. My communication style is naturally more dominant, but if I'm in kind of like a normal situation and I identify that someone else in the room has that dominant style, I might actually become more submissive in that particular arrangement because I'm like, I don't need to worry about this. That person's got their shit together. I don't need to control them. If I'm not trying to control someone else, then there's no reason for me to want to engage in this type of thing. You're only going to get this when you're going up against a dominant is if you're both in a pissing match for control in the situation. And then you're right. If someone is playing dominant and they encounter a real like dominant style, they're not going to do well. The real dominant is going to play with them a little bit, just like the narcissist. They're going to play with them a little bit and then they're going to move in for the kill. But this is something that you can practice, okay? And things on the internet are great for this type of practice. I think that the internet is one of the best avenues that you have to really practice psychological fuckery. Listen, why do you think I spend any time at all just like bothering myself with the likes of Chrissy fucking Mayer? She is a moron. She has no value to me at all, except that she's interesting to play with like a puppet, to see if I can predict her actions, to see if I can predict what she's going to do next, to plant a seed that is going to pop in her head 3 months from now that she isn't even aware that I planted yet. It can be fun. So it's okay to practice. It's okay. And again, you're not doing anything that's going to have lasting effects. You are not being abusive no matter what they try to tell you. This is not abuse. It is not. They'll try to convince you it is because they don't like it, but just because they don't like something doesn't actually make it abuse. But play with them. And if they don't like it, then they can walk away. Oh, am I, Colonel? Am I arrogant? Oh, I'll just have to live my life with the disappointment of having come across as arrogant to a needle-dicked anonymous account on the internet. Goodbye. See, in that case, what I just did to that guy that I just blocked in my chat was I played with him a little bit. I insulted him for a good little kick out the door. And then I just denied the premise of what he said because that's how you do it. So don't be, that would actually be my last piece of advice is don't be afraid to play with people like that on the internet. They'll survive. And what doesn't kill them will make them stronger because triggering people does ultimately make them stronger at the end of the day. Once they kind of move through their little feelings about it, they will actually come out as a stronger, more resilient person. In fact, some might argue that you are doing them a favor by triggering them in the first place. All right, guys, that is really all I have for today. Again, if you would like to join me for a private Zoom call with my community starting in about 20 minutes, head over to activelyunwoke.com/support. And you can pick up a copy of my book, Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life that we read a little bit from today for our lesson on fucking with people's heads. You can also head over to artofthetrigger.com, which is right now just redirecting to a Substack where you can find some of my posts about triggering people. And I've got podcasts as well. I read all the posts so you have them in both text and audio format. And this is going to be a place that I'm writing about triggering people every once in a while as kind of a side project that's a little bit fun. So you can head over there and subscribe if you want more information. But also, if you want to join us for that Zoom call in about 20 minutes, you can head over to activelyunwoke.com/support and join my Patreon, or probably my locals is going to be better, but you can join Patreon too, whatever's clever for you. Locals is $5 a month, $50 a year. You can also make a one-time gift. We do 2 Zoom calls every single week. We do a book club. We are reading the Unabomber Manifesto right now. We have our book club on December 3rd. We are doing weekly movie nights now in my supporter Discord. You can become a member of my supporter Discord by getting on locals, or supporting me on one of my Substacks, or by joining Patreon, or even by becoming a member of this channel. And you will get access to all the perks. And yeah, guys, that's all I have. Hey, Carlin, I mean no offense. At what point did you notice that Carrie was trying to fuck with your head? Do you want to see? I'll show you. Hang on. I will show you exactly when this started. I'm working on a project right now in which I'm documenting every single bit of Carrie Smith's bullshit. And actually, hang on. If you go to my Twitter account, I don't have it done yet because I can only work on this in small bursts. But if you go to my Twitter account, Dr. Carlin B, at the very top of my Twitter account, you are going to find this post in which I point out that Carrie Smith is an unhinged lunatic that has been threatened with a defamation lawsuit by her former partner. And then go to the very next tweet, and you're going to find this thread that I've started that says, "For the curious, this is how Carrie's obsession with me started. Remember that time that I didn't mention Carrie at all, and Carrie, who had blocked me, used as an opportunity to spread lies about me?" I'm literally documenting every single tweet that this woman has ever sent about me. And it started on November 4th, 2020, when Carrie, after she had blocked me, so I didn't see this, after she had blocked me, I had tweeted something, and this is why I was flying home after the election. I had tweeted, "In the same way that you should never give power to people who crave it, never assume people who strive to be famous are ever doing things for authentic reasons. Many of them are kind of nuts, honestly. And yeah, I'm totally weird, but I never strive to do this. Ha ha." I tweeted that. Carrie went into an unhinged fucking rant and tweeted, "You are quite possibly the most inauthentic, unprincipled, untrustworthy narcissist I have ever met in my life." And thus it began. And that's really when it started. And you can see all the tweets that Carrie has ever sent about me. I think I'm only up to like November of 2021 at this point. So I still have a lot of documenting to go, but you can see every unhinged attack that this woman has ever inflicted on me right now by going to that thread at the top of my Twitter. And I will also be documenting this elsewhere, Carrie. And that's a side project that I'm working on because I'm sick of this shit. I'm sick of it. Yeah, I'll be documenting it somewhere else. Red Room Diecast. I may be starting a Substack called Surviving Carrie Smith. I may have already registered it today, where I will be documenting all of this, Carrie. For anyone who has questions about Carrie Smith being an unhinged lunatic that has been smearing me for 2 years on the internet, who refuses to go no contact. So fuck it. Yeah, it gets even worse. It gets even worse. Yes, Tori, we are doing a Zoom. I'm coming to Zoom in 15 minutes, okay? All right, guys, that's all I have for this time because, as Tori is reminding us, we have a Zoom call starting at 7. But thank you guys for spending some time with me. I really do appreciate it. If this topic interests you, leave a comment. Let me know what you'd like to learn about it. And maybe we can do more streams like this. I love talking about this stuff. I think it's fun. And so I'm happy to stream about it anytime. I will be back tomorrow. I don't know what I'm streaming yet at 5, but remember also tomorrow night, we are We are doing Nothing Remotely Controversial with Joshua at 9:30 tomorrow night, but I will also be doing a stream at 5. Keep an eye on the channel. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. I will announce what we're doing tomorrow, but for right now, I'm going to go take a 15-minute break, and then we're going to get on Zoom with my community. See you guys soon.